Thank you. Agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, we're going to take item 9 out of order and address it at this time. Item number 9, order authorizing the city administrator to execute a purchase option extension with Bates Mill LLC regarding Bates Mill number 5. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the city administrator to execute a purchase option extension with Bates Mill LLC regarding Bates Mill number 5.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilor Cloutier, seconded by Councilor Golden. Discussion.
Sure. As I stated last week when we discussed this matter, I think this project is one of the most important projects in the city's history, especially at this scale and especially in our downtown. And I think it has a lot of implications for what happens to the rest of the riverfront area. And I think, we've got a development team and people who have expressed interest in being part of the projects that are pretty significant and who have a track record in this community. So I'm very excited to go forward with extending the option to make sure that this is done right. And these things take time, as been displayed and spoken and discussed at the last meeting. Also want the council or the public to know that we've had many discussions, presentations about this. Often it looks like the council is here and we've got a rubber stamp, but we've had hours of discussions about this project and also the background material that goes back a long way. So we've vetted this project, we've discussed it, and I'm really confident in going forward and extending the option to make sure this is done the right way. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to that motion.
We have to do another motion, right?
Well, could I just ask Councilor Lajoie for clarification? Are you actually amending the motion, which is requested action, or are you planning to amend the order, which is the next page?
What the difference?
The order is on page 2 behind tab number 9. The actual motion is just the one sentence that appears in the bottom box on your cover sheet. Requested
Well,
action.
why don't I read it and you tell me where you think it fits? Does that work?
Yes, sir.
I want to echo some of the things that Councilor Leiston said, and I agree to some extent. I'm new to the process, and the motion, I'll just read it for the record, then I'll provide you with a copy. An amendment to the motion on the floor to change the extension timeline from 1 year to 60 days. Furthermore, I move that the council schedule a joint workshop consisting of the Planning Board, Finance Committee, and this body within 45 days to hear the Bates Mill LLC proposal and progress on the project to date so members of those groups can review the proposal and ask questions. I further propose that this workshop be open to the public and allow public comments.
Yes, that would be an amendment to the order.
Okay.
And we could certainly do that. You have that in writing, you said?
I do.
Excellent. Mr. Mayor, the motion on the floor is the one that's printed in your book, but what would be in order now would be an amendment to amend the order that's on pages 2 and 3 behind tab number 9. So Councilor Lajoie just read his proposed amendment to the order.
So, a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a second for Councilor Chance. Discussion. Councilor Cloutier.
So I have concern about offering a 60-day extension. I think that there's a possibility that the two major tenants, the hospital and the Y, we're planning to present this to their boards, and that may cause problems for them. I also think the developer is spending a large amount of money each month of his own investment on this property, and I think that we have the commitment on the part of those three individuals to move forward with the one-year option agreement. I don't understand why we can't do all of the things in Councilor Lajoie's proposed amendment to the order. Is that the order? Mm-hmm. During that that one-year option agreement.
My concern would be that, having had some discussions I've been up to my neck in Bates Mill 5 for the last month trying to get brought up to speed. I've had some discussions with members of the Planning Board and the Finance Committee that haven't seen the plan. We appoint these boards to provide advice and consent to this council. Some of it is expertise that I don't have. We just had a workshop in the previous session to discuss a human resource change that really is only a $20,000 impact. I'm impressed with Mr. Platz's plan. I'll be upfront about that. In the 24 years or so that I have been watching this project, I have a timeline that goes back to 1992 when I was 40 pounds lighter and had a lot more brown hair, which I no longer have. I think this is probably the most advanced and the most exciting plan that I've seen, but there have been people that have not seen it. I don't think taking time to bring all of the stakeholders to one session to discuss it, see the proposal, ask the questions, I see that as transparent. If there is a consensus that this is something that we need to move with, then we can introduce a 12-month option then. But I think at the end of 60 days, since we've been discussing this for a long time, that there ought to be a decision that we're either going to begin construction or we're going to begin demolition. We've been talking about this project for a very long time. I'm not opposed to the project. I would like to see all of the stakeholders discuss it because I think it's that important. It's a project, as Mr. Lyson says, that is going to define the face of the downtown for the next half century. Let me say that again, the next half century. It's very expensive. It's going to be the rudder that steers the economic direction of the city for the next half century. I don't see a joint workshop as being a bad idea. I see it as being a very good one. Bring everybody to the table. Let's all get on one page. Let's get it all out there. And at the end of that 60 days, Mr. Platt either gets his 12 months or the city has a backup plan that says this is not going to work and we need to move for demolition. That's my reasoning.
Mr. Mayor.
No chance.
Once again, this is before us. This makes the third time I've seen this since I've been a councilor, and that's over 2 years now. As this is, for a myriad of reasons that I don't particularly care to go into now, but that's a possibility, I would oppose this motion as presented to us. I would, however, support the motion as amended, the order as amended. If that amended order is passed, this will come back to the council in, is it 60 days, council?
Yes.
60 days. I do believe this is the right thing to do, given the impact and the scope of what we have before us. And I would support this motion, obviously, as the order is amended. I would not support the order as presented.
Council Cludio.
So as other members of the council have pointed out, this is something that has been on the table for a very long time. We're not talking about 2 weeks. We're talking about years. A $70 million private sector investment takes a lot of time to pull together. As was requested, we were at a workshop about this topic, was it last week, a week or 2 weeks ago? Nobody had any questions at that time. All of a sudden, there are a lot of questions about this. Letters of intent were requested from the two major community partners who are planning to invest in the project. Those letters of intent were produced. I feel like the developer and the community partners have worked with us extensively up until this point. They've provided what has been asked of them. There have been numerous public input sessions on this project. Planning board members, finance committee members, the public, members of any other city committee are welcome to attend those meetings and to voice their opinions. This isn't something that's been happening in a back room. It's been very public. It's been extensive. And I support the order as it stands with the 12-month option.
Anyone else?
My final response to that is yes, it's taken a long time. It's been discussed a long time. We have a close to final proposal, I guess, on the project is the way I'd want to put it. What's another 60 days to let the public see what has probably been proposed as the final project or the final plan?
Yes.
Just to briefly clarify, I think we have a pretty good idea of what the final architectural project's going to look like, but I'm not sure that we have all of the information we're yet going to need to evaluate the financial side of the project. That's one of the issues that's remaining out there. The option, of course, is an option to sell the building to Mr. Platz for $1. He can walk away from the deal. And I'm sure that a lot of time over the next few months will be spent on the whole issue of how is this all going to work, how is it all going to be financed, what are the requirements that the developer is looking at from the city, what's the city looking at from the developer. So just to clarify, yes, I think we have a pretty good idea of what's planned. What we don't yet have totally nailed down is the financial side of it and the requirements on the developer in the city.
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
In that regard, this order is for an option contract for $1 for the contract and $1 for the building and property. That itself is an item for discussion, but I would like to address the statement that our administrator just made, which I believe is true, that we don't know the economic impact to the city, to the taxpayers. And the residents and taxpayers of this city are the shareholders of this corporation. They own the building. It isn't the city of Lewiston's building. It isn't the city councilor's building as a body. It is the taxpayers of Lewiston. If we are going into an option at this point without really knowing what the economic impact to the city, to the taxpayers, to the shareholders is, I believe a 60-day limit to bring it back to the council again to gather information such as that is in the best interest economically, fiscally, and responsibly to the taxpayers that we represent. And there is no harm in bringing this back to the council in 60 days. In that time, we may determine a lot about this. There is no joint development agreement. I see in the option contract that was provided to the council, it lays out a requirement of a joint development agreement that hasn't been made yet. And an option contract is for, in consideration of $1 in this case, a value given to the property. The economic impact to the taxpayers of this city is not something that we can guess at when going into an option agreement. And I believe that it behooves us to take a little more time and look at the numbers and see what we're doing. That is the responsible thing to do to the taxpayers, and it does not stop this in its track. This will come back to the council if this amended order is passed.
Well, and just to clarify, the joint development agreement that's required is not self-executing. That has to come back to the council to be approved, so that all that the option agreement is saying is that we will work to negotiate a joint development agreement. When that comes back, if it is unacceptable to the council does not have to approve it, which would then leave Mr. Platz with the option of he could still execute the option, which would be that he would own the building for $1, but there would be no city participation without a joint development agreement.
And I would repeat my statement again, that it is the responsible thing to do, to dig a little deeper into these numbers and the economic impact, the true economic impact of any potential development. If the city is willing to sell this land for $1 when it's valued for $1.7, $1.8 million on the city tax rolls, that's a separate debate. But the merits of this, I believe, returning it in 60 days does no harm. And it gives us the opportunity to be responsible and do the right thing and really look at this and see where this is going to go. And perhaps get some answers from staff before we move ahead with this in 60 days. And it's very likely that it would be moved forward in 60 days. Therefore, I see no harm in this, and I think it's the responsible thing to do.
If I could just comment, I understand what's being said on both sides of the discussion here. Extending the option tonight allows the work that's underway and has been underway for the last 2 years on this project to continue. There's been a dramatic amount of work spent. We've got tenants that are ready to go to their boards. I'm not so sure they'd be excited about going to their boards if there's a question mark whether or not the city's even willing to sell it for $1. The issues you are raising, Councilor Lajoie, I absolutely agree. This needs a more thorough public vetting. That is what the joint development agreement, the amended parking agreement, and the TIF agreement, that is exactly what that is for. We will have the numbers. We do not know enough about this project, exactly what the parking demands are for the project, which will translate into how much parking needs to be built. So to run the pro forma, we need to know more information. Extending the option allows that work to continue. We'll know a lot more. This is not the last time the City Council will see it. That when the time comes for signing up for public investment, there will be other meetings, other opportunities for public discussion. I do think, I also want to note, this is the purview of the council. The planning board has development review authority over this project. They do not have authority over the financial structure of it. The finance committee's role is to award bids on projects. It is not to tell the city council how to structure joint development agreements. I don't disagree that they should be aware and participating, but the decision on this sits with this board. And you will see this again. Extending it tonight simply allows this work to continue, and we need to keep working on the joint development agreement. We need to keep working on the parking amendment related to the rest of the Bates Mill complex. There's a lot of moving parts here. It's not only complicated for Mr. Platz, it's complicated on the city side as well. There's 20 years of history, agreements in the past that we're trying to restructure that make sense to meet the needs of the project as well as to meet the needs of the taxpayer. Create jobs, change the perception of the community, add to the tax base. There's a lot of things at play here. This is simply extending the option. That's all we're asking you to do tonight, to allow the momentum that's already been built to continue.
Councilor Lyson?
Yeah, I mean, I think Link makes it clear. I mean, we have the legislative authority and responsibility. I mean, this is a purchase option extension. There's not a long line of people who are willing to step forward and put forward a project like this, spending their own money along the way. And I really am opposed to the amendment. I think it's just dragging our feet and sending completely the wrong message, both to the boards of some of the entities who are interested in going in. There are others who are in negotiations currently. I think it sends the wrong message that we have questions about a purchase option extension, which we totally have the purview, responsibility, and legislative authority to enact. And I say we move forward.
And my final comment is I agree. It's well within our purview, and I accept that. I'm asking for the advice and consent of the Planning Committee and the Finance Committee. If there are problems in this proposal or there are questions about this proposal, I would prefer that they would be settled sooner rather than later, and that's why I put this motion forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Chance?
Regarding Planning Board, Finance, well, it is true that it is not directly in their purview right now. As was stated by staff earlier this evening, the LA Public Health Committee does not have absolute purview over public health issues that come before the council, but it is the council's option to present that or to put that before the Public Health Committee board. So I see this as nothing different from that, to allow this to really be looked at and make sure we have a lot of input from people who know a lot about this stuff to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I do support this again. Thanks.
Councilor Cludier?
So can I just ask a question, Ed? So if we move ahead with the 12-month option, is there anything in there that precludes us from seeking an opinion from the Planning Board or the Finance Committee?
No, both at this point and also at the point where the joint development agreement is closer to being finalized and available.
Thank you.
Councilor Bouchard and Councilor Chance.
So I came in tonight. I've still got some reservations about the project as a whole. I think I I came here ready to extend this for 12 months. I don't have a lot of heartburn where it is just an option agreement. It's not the joint development agreement. We do still have to see this again. So I came ready to vote on that, and I may still. But I also don't really have a problem if a counselor or several counselors may need a little more time, may need another opinion, in letting this go for 60 days and letting the work go forward and getting those questions answered that they need. So I would say I don't really have a problem with either option per se. If someone needs a little more time, as long as the work can still go forward and it doesn't end on February 18th and we have the time to do it, I don't see a harm.
Any further comments? We have sat here for 10 years or more doing this. We're going to take it down. We're going to build it. We're going to take it down. How is he going to attract? Right now, we're looking at, we're not even sure if we're going to be going through with this. And that does has to send a message to the people he's trying to get in there. That now you got a city council there, they don't even know what they're not really sure. We cannot say definitely that this is going to pass, or that this project could even go forward. I think a time has come to just, let's go forward. He's put a lot of his own money in there. Let's go forward with it. We cannot continue doing this. This is probably why we don't get any businesses in here, because we're always fighting. Any further questions? Anybody else from the council? Any further discussion? Hearing none to the public.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Robert Reed, 58 Albert Street, speaking as chair of the Finance Committee, as a past councilor, and as a resident of the city and taxpayer. Welcome to the tie that binds you to the last 10 councils. Every year we wrestle with this. And guess what? We're still here. Guess what? The mill hasn't been maintained for 20 years. We turned off the heat several years ago. I'm not aware that it's been turned back on. It's cold storage. Can you imagine taking a home and not using it for 20 years and expecting you to have no problems? Our council voted to demolish it, overturned by a later council in hopes that someone was going to do something. I personally am tired of the promise of someone doing something. I appreciate the time that Mr. Platz and others put into it, but there comes a time where we have to make a decision to either demolish or sell the property and be done with it. My understanding is the cost to rehabilitate the building as is would be substantially greater than if you tore it down and had green space to sell and redevelop. Mr. Lewiston, I see you shaking your head. There is no way anyone has ever shown me anything that said it's cheaper to redevelop that as is safely, economically, as compared to putting something new there that still has the same look of what's there. We can do it, but it may be easier with something new. But we continue to go down this path every year, and nothing's happening. I truly appreciate the idea of a 60-day window to just look at it. It's not going to affect anything final, but it may allow more people to weigh in and talk to you about this, about what they've seen, what they understand it to be. At the end of the process, if nothing else, I would strongly recommend you consider going to a non-binding citizens referendum and let the people of this city tell you whether it's time to be done or redevelop it. Thank you.
My name is Bob Faunce. I'm a local land use planner, and I was not here for this reason. In fact, if you had kept your schedule, I would have been out of here because I'm the one who got. However, this discussion has scared me to death tonight. I used to be city planner here. My last day was in 1985. When I left, actually midterm when I was city planner, there were 3,000 people working in the Bates Mill. Thousands more in Continental Hill. And I saw the slow disintegration of that. At one point, Bates Mill was empty. And slowly through the Platz and through the city, great things have been done. And now we're at the point where we've got the toughest nut to crack. And I guess it was last year when I heard that the Y might move over. I was very excited. I don't think there's green space. That's not in the future there. Lewiston needs its mills. I was down in Biddeford in Saco today in business, and they've maintained almost all their mills. Slowly they've filled up with a wide variety of businesses. We've done a pretty good job here, but the job is far from done. I'm also scared to death to see what the headlines in the paper are going to be tomorrow. A 60-day, they're asking for a 1-year extension of an option. And really, the sense I get is that we're not really talking about 60 days or 365 days. It sounds like the discussion is whether or not we're going to raise that mill or whether or not we're going to move forward with CMMC and the Y and what have you and do something that is going to define the city for many, many years to come. And I was hoping that I was hoping to never hear this discussion again, but of course it's come up. Good people can have different opinions on this, but from my perspective as a former city planner and as a professional planner, I think that this asking for a 1-year extension is a positive message, not only to these folks, but to other businesses. I was here a couple weeks ago. We talked about the Exit 80. I mean, it's all related. So I ask you if you could consider giving that positive vote. If you want the Finance Committee or Planning Board involved, that's great. But the difference between 60 days and 365 days is a big headline as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll refrain from the clapping, please. Thank you. Any other? Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Shanna Cox. I own 119 Ash Street here in Lewiston. I would like to say first and above all, thank you for your roles over 10 years on this issue, your desire to do due diligence, to work collaboratively with the Planning Board and the Finance Committee. I think those are all great ideals, and I think the original order as presented provides space and opportunity for that. As president of Grow LA, we're an organization that believes in community engagement, and I would love to see stakeholders partake in conversations about how to round out this space in addition to 2 long-term community-based tenants who are working very hard at making a prolonged commitment to this community. I think what's different about this development over the past options that we've seen at Bates Mill number 5 space is that they were all single use. And this is an opportunity to have mixed use in a way that supports all of the assets in our community. Clearly, you know how I feel about the mill and its direction. But what I'd really like to say is that I think tonight what you're being asked to do goes above and beyond 60 days or even 365. You're being asked to define a moment, an opportunity in this community that people will reflect on for years to come. You are being asked to provide confidence to business, to residents, to taxpayers, to people outside of our city who are looking. And in my planning and development work that I'm doing regionally, people are tracking this. They are waiting to see which direction Lewiston Auburn leans. Will they lean towards the future or will they lean backwards? And the raising or the building, I think, really exemplifies the option that you have in front of you tonight. And people want to see us succeed as a community. Folks within this community want the option, the 1-year option, to see us succeed. And I think that you have a great opportunity to not only provide that, but provide the due diligence, the engagement, and the collaboration that you're seeking. And so I would hope that you would find something that offers a little more than 60 days because a $70 million deal is a little complicated to put together in 2 months' time. And that really takes into account the folks who are making the commitments, their longstanding stature in this community, and their commitment to this community. I think it's a great opportunity for you to set a new path for Lewiston. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Hi, my name is Mark Hare, and I'm a resident of Ward 6. So we've been talking about Bates Mill for approximately 10 years, and I was involved in those discussions for 6 years. In the first year or two as a councilor, I was a strong advocate of demolishing the building. My dad worked there throughout his lifetime. Worked way too many hours in a company that I felt took advantage of employees. Then one day, Grow LA came in and presented to the council what that building could be. And from that day on, I became an advocate of saving that building and allowing the community to bring it back to its rightful place. We have one of Lewiston's largest employers sitting here, and one of Lewiston's most well-respected developers sitting here, saying that they're going to make that project work. It was slated for demolition, but because of an error in the mortgage, it was pulled for that reason, and thank God it was, because it allowed Grow LA to stay focused. I just want to remind the council, there's always debate about where we invest our money, and we hear from citizens that we invest too much downtown, not enough out of downtown. But we need to remember our downtown is the heartbeat of our community. If that's thriving, the rest of the community will thrive. So I would encourage the council to recognize that 60 days could mean the difference of one of the largest employers walking away and the developer walking away, and I would never want to take that chance. Giving them a year costs this city nothing at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Sandy Markey, 78 Essex Street in Lewiston. I'm a longtime business owner. I've lived here many, many years. I think Mr. Platz has an amazing track record. We're asking somebody to take this over. I heard somebody mention, why don't we sell this to someone? This man is willing to take this on at a big risk. His track record is amazing. He's successful. I think giving him a year is not a lot to ask, especially when you think of the stakeholders that are coming into this. These are big names. The other thing I'd like to mention is I'm on the planning board. I'm not here to speak as a planning board, for the planning board. However, no, the Bates Mill is not in our purview. It did not come in front of us. However, I would remind the council that there was another very big project that I'm actually in favor of, but that also didn't come in front of the planning board, and that's Exit 80. So just wanted to bring that up, but thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Carl Shalane. I live at 17 Cherrywood Drive in Lewiston. So I was here last week and expressed my that you vote in favor of this. It's been a week and my feelings haven't changed. We need to move this thing forward. This is a huge investment in our downtown. There's no one else who can do this right besides Mr. Platz, and he's lined up tenants that are going to take like 50, 60, 70,000 square feet. Like, where else are these tenants going to go? And this doesn't happen every day. We need to move forward with the 1 year option. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Hearing none, back to the council.
We do have a motion to amend on the floor.
Yes, so
Can you read
the
that?
pending motion, Mr. Mayor, is to amend the order as Councilor Lajoie had read his amendment, yes.
So to amend it to the 60-day.
The entire
everybody knows
motion, the entire amendment that Councilor Lajoie read. So I'd be happy to read it, or if you'd like to have Councilor Lajoie read it again, just for clarification. It included more than just the 60-day,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Read it again. Amendment motion to the floor to change the extension timeline from 1 year to 60 days. Move the council schedule a joint workshop consisting of the Planning Board, Finance Committee, and this body within 45 days to hear the Bates Mill LLC proposal and progress on the Bates Mill 5 project, so members of those groups can review the proposal, ask questions. Further propose the workshop be open to the public and allow public comments.
Okay. Anybody else? Call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 3.
No.
Ward 4.
No.
Ward 5.
No.
Ward 6.
No.
Ward 7.
Yes?
Ward 1.
No.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion failed by a vote of by a vote of 2 to 5. So before you, Mr. Mayor, is the original motion as printed on the cover page, which includes the original order as presented in your book.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor Cludia. Is there any further discussion on that? Yes, Councilor LaChance,
Wasn't that already moved and seconded once?
I think.
It is, yes. So it's already on the floor automatically because the amendment failed. So the original motion is on the floor automatically.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm old and it's been so long I forgot. Okay, call the roll. I think we've already had our discussions.
Councilor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
No.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 5 to 2.
Thank you. Any other reports or updates? Okay. Okay, any other city business? Can I get a
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Given the inspiration of the councilor from Ward 2's earlier amended order, which went down in flames, I would like to propose at this point a joint meeting between the council, the planning board, and the finance committee regarding Bates Mill number 5. The merits of that were discussed by the council and some of the audience members. So I would like to see that at the soonest convenient time, perhaps within 30 days, if possible.
They need to be seconded.
Okay.
Second.
And that is a motion. Do
You
you
don't
have
need
a second on that?
Yes. Second.
We'll see what happens. All right, you put something together.
There's a motion and a second, so I think council needs to vote.
Oh, okay. I didn't think we really needed that. I think we could just do that. Yes.
Question. I mean, this is a real busy time, this next, almost 2 months with budgets and the LCIP we've got to deal with as well. I just don't know what, if 30, you said 30, that's a suggested date, but it could be longer.
I would prefer no longer than that. I mean, I can't see that there is no time available to put something together. If we, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if we go out any longer, the councilor is right. I mean, there is budgets coming up. I wouldn't want to kick it out in the middle of that. So I think 30 days is a comfortable window because of the other commitments that various committees have.
Mayor?
Yes.
And not to throw one more thing at you, but following up on what Councilor LaChance said, and which was brought forth by the planning board member, Sandy Markey, I wonder if it would make sense to do the same thing with the Exit 80 project, even though we know it's already moved forward. If we're going to go to the finance committee and the planning board on one project, I feel as though we should be doing that with.
Mr. Mayor? That does have an approved joint development agreement. It's complete. The financials are known to the city. There are no unknowns as far as the city's commitment to that. Has that information been made public, the joint development agreement?
Yes, it was adopted by the council in a public meeting.
It is out there. Is there any joint development agreement underway right now with the Bates Mill project?
There are negotiations on several fronts, on the joint development agreement, on the parking agreement that relates back to the entire mill complex.
But nothing is out there.
No, nothing has been out there because all of it, mean, that's one of the difficulties is that we are still in negotiations.
Correct.
And so it's hard to share a development agreement. We normally like to get an indication from the council and discussing it in executive session of what's acceptable or what's not acceptable, so that we know what our negotiating position is with the developer, without the developer knowing what our negotiation position is before they sit down to negotiate with us.
And this comes back to something that is finite. We know it's done, it's agreed, it's taken care of, versus something that has implications that aren't really fully explored. And there's a lot of responsible committees and boards in this city that would do well to have it as an item for discussion. There are points that we may not be thinking of that may be brought up. I would like, for if no other reason than that, to have this meeting. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be simple, one meeting. If more meetings are desired at that point, perhaps that could happen. But if not, we can say that we did it and we did the right thing.
Right.
I do believe there are parties that would like to discuss this, probably people I'm not even aware of yet. I think it's the right thing to do, given what was before us and what we spoke about earlier tonight. I see no reason or no fear that we should be afraid of doing this.
The only caveat I'd throw out is that it's difficult for us at this point, since we're negotiating with the developer, to share details of a yet-to-be-negotiated agreement. I agree we could certainly show the plans, make a presentation about that, talk about some of the elements of it, but this is still very much a moving target in our conversations with the developer. And I can't tell you, you've in executive session, you've had some previews. I cannot tell you that those previews are reflective of what will be in the final document. So we could certainly do a session with the planning board and share what the developer's plans are for the development. I don't believe we're at a point yet where we could reasonably share what all of the required financial arrangements are. But as we get further down the road, when all of that becomes clearer, I think we certainly would be in a position where we could do that with other committees.
So I would request in the motion for staff to put something together, a brief for discussion, and obviously staff knows where they can and can't go. And I think that would obviously simplify the idea. Discussion can ensue and staff can direct as to what is not open at this point and what is. It seems to be pretty clear as far as where the discussions can go and where they can.
Councilor Lyson?
We workshopped this in the public realm, right? It was on cable TV. People saw it. I haven't heard anybody come out in opposition at the public hearings or raise any questions. There's been support. Obviously, you've raised some good points, but a process that can occur within that year period. I'm just a little concerned of putting timelines on something. Obviously, I'm fully in support of transparency when it's appropriate. We go into executive sessions based upon certain legal parameters to discuss matters that that can't be discussed at that time during the public without risking the project or the sale or whatever reason we're going into. We're going into for labor negotiations and disposition of property. So I guess my point is that I think we need that public meeting, but I don't know if we can say that it's got to be in 30 days or or how beneficial that will be. Like I said, we saw the drawings at the workshop. We were privileged to them in our executive sessions, a little deeper discussions, but and I do trust staff to say what they can and what they can't put forward. But again, it's the purview of this council to approve the joint agreement and this option, and that's and the people put their faith and trust in us, and I think we've got to execute that in a way that preserves what needs to be preserved until that can go totally public and until the joint development agreement is there. And how long do you think that's going to take to put together?
Well, like I say, there are some moving parts in this thing that need to be nailed down before we would know for sure. and I hate to publicly get specific about what some of those are. And Link, do you have any? I mean, it's probably a 6-month process starting now to get to a point where we have something along what we've traditionally done in the past is, as we've gotten close to an agreement, we've tried to put together a term sheet that tries to summarize that agreement, and then have a workshop at that point so that people have a chance to see what's included in there. But I will also point out that there is the potential that we would never even get to that point, that we would end up coming back to you with a negotiated agreement the council says no to. And so that option's out there as well. But, you know, for example, in discussing the canals over the years, as we've come close to an agreement, we've put out term sheets, had workshops, had people react. Sometimes what people reacted to results in changes in the agreement. Casella's MRF was a great example of that, where we had a huge amount of public participation, and as a result of it, we ended up with changing some of the terms and conditions of the contract.
Mr. Mayor? You raise a good point about the joint development agreement, which hasn't happened yet, and that is or will be underway. Those discussions will be happening if they aren't happening already.
They are, and we've already got joint.
So having this workshop with two committees and the council, I believe the last workshop we had maybe one committee member from either committee was here. Having a workshop and a roundtable discussion very well may shine some light on this as far as angles and items that we haven't considered, and that may well shape the attitudes and directions that this council goes in crafting a development agreement that is better than what it might otherwise have been. I believe there's only benefits to gain from this. There should be transparency. There should be involvement of these two particular committees and boards, not because that it's their purview, but because it's the right thing to do. And the discussions that ensue might provide this council a better insight into what we will be directing staff to do in the joint development agreement, if it gets to that point.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think there's a very fine line that has to be walked there in terms of what information can be made public and what information can't be made public.
That's great. We cannot.
And knowing the Finance Committee and the Planning Board, they're going to want to know that stuff. You know, right, Bob? You don't want to just look at pretty pictures in Mill 5. You want to know what the financial deal is.
I would love to see as much as we can, yes.
Yeah, and at this point, there's not much that we could
But I think there
share.
are other things that need to be known to this council. For example, how much money has it cost the city in staff time and materials and effort over the past 20 years to be where we still are?
I would, whatever it is, it's water under the bridge to a degree. Are we
Down the
looking to
canal.
water under the canal,
Down the canal.
to a degree?
We haven't dammed up the bridge. We haven't dammed up the water. It's still flowing.
I think, if I may, this is the reason that this discussion has to happen. Because if we do not do this, and a joint development agreement is signed, and then after the fact, everybody comes out of the woodwork and rips this to shreds, and this council takes heat for it, and staff takes heat for it, and accusations are made, and things are flying around, I would rather take care of this ahead of time. Get this out there. Let people say what they need to say. If there's a real concern, and it isn't so much about staff giving information that they shouldn't be giving out. That's not the question. The question is hearing the ideas and concerns of planning board and finance committee members and other people in the public. Given that the council tonight has taken a stand on this and moved this in a direction once again, I think the time is at hand to really get these questions put out there so staff and the council can look at them and say, okay, we didn't think of that. That's a good thing. We're going to direct staff to at least bring this up and ensure that this particular concern is addressed. I would rather take care of that ahead of the curve on this joint development agreement process than after after it's done and we're doing damage control at that point. That can make the difference in what we do today versus what we have been doing historically. And a lot of the historical things, water under the bridge, if we ignore the history, we're guaranteed to repeat history. And that's one thing that a lot of people in Lewiston do not want to do. And we need to do things differently, like the Exit 80 agreement, which I believe the past council knocked that one out of the park. Nothing like I've ever seen. As far as doing something the right way, protecting the taxpayers, protecting the city, maximum return on the investment from what I can gather, and doing it on the up and up. That was unprecedented in my eyes. And I think we have the opportunity here to go down that same road again and do this the right way. There are so many concerns on this particular issue. It's a controversial issue. If we don't hear them out ahead of the curve here, we may in fact be doing damage control down the road. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And I would point out that we go in there to executive session, we hash this stuff over, we come out here, we have a workshop. After the workshop, the public knows it's out there. If they're that concerned, they show up, okay? They show up. And then after the workshop is all over, we have a meeting. Again, they can show up. And if they want, once this thing is all done, and then all of a sudden they want to come out of the woodwork, well, they had their chance. And as far as taking heat goes, I think I've taken more heat than anybody in Androscoggin County in the past 4 years. And it ain't that bad. I mean, if you can't take the heat, then probably you shouldn't be here. We do the best we can. They've elected us to do this, and so let's go out there and do it. Okay? We have workshops. If you want to have 2 workshops, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. But we have it open to the public. We don't need all these meetings and everything else. I mean, we have a public meeting. Members of the finance committee can come here. Members of everybody can come here. They can sit right in the audience, and there's one by one they can parade up and they can make their concerns known. That's why we have the public meetings. That's why we're here. That's why I always say, anybody that's here, if I'm having a workshop, anybody that's here, if you want to show up here, then whether I agree with you or not, you're going to get the right to speak. Okay? We don't shut anybody off. Everything is up. So if they don't want to come down here, I mean, the only time I've ever seen this place really packed was a speed bump on College Street. We had a couple of million.
A lot of people hit that speed bump.
And nobody even comes here, but a speed bump, boy, we had the place was all packed.
I would say, Mr. Mayor, if I may, if we're not shutting anybody out, I think there's no reason to not have one workshop with the 2 boards. And I move the question.
Okay. Anybody else?
There's no second.
What do we?
Was there a second?
What we're voting on here?
Yeah, can you review that?
Right, so,
There was a second.
Okay, you need to vote on the motion to
close debate.
close debate.
Because Councilor LaChance said that he'd like to move the question, and Councilor Lajoie seconded that, if that's, yes. So the motion before you now is to stop debate, so there is no discussion on stopping debate, and you would go to an immediate vote to stop debate on this motion.
It's just the way it is.
So the vote before you, Mr. Mayor, would be to stop debate, and then we would go to the immediate question, which is to hold a joint workshop of the Council, Planning Board, and Finance Committee on Bates Mill 5 as soon as possible, hopefully within the next 30 days. So the motion before you is to stop debate on this item.
Is everybody clear on that? Okay. Call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yeah, okay.
Ward
Yes.
1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
So the motion has been passed by a vote of 7-0 to stop debate. So the motion before you now is to hold the joint workshop. Councilor from Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
No.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 4-3.